Good morning, all the delegates. We are moving towards our second session of EFDP ESTTP by Dr. Sandip V. Pawar, Assistant Professor, University Institute of Pharmaceutical Sciences, Panjab University, Chandigarh. He completed his education. He did his PhD from Institute of Chemical Technology, ICT, Mumbai, MTech from Naipur, SAS, Mohali, Punjab, and he did his B.Pharm from College of Pharmacy, Nasik. His work experience include he worked as a research scientist in Rubicon Research Private Limited, Mumbai, and BioPlus Life Sciences, Hosur, India. He also worked as senior scientist, University of British Columbia, Vancouver, Canada. Currently, he is assistant professor at UIPS, Panjab University, Chandigarh. His expertise and achievements include he has extensive experience in mammalian cell culture, assay development, and functional screening of active pharmaceutical ingredients using in vitro cell culture models. He has been working more than 7 years in area of biovalorization of lignin and is currently working in area of development of entities using biomass derived polymer lignin. His lab currently develops lignin-derived nanoformulation for efficient delivery of methotrexate and novel TLR7 agonist compounds. He has been awarded 6 research projects so far from UGC, industry, DST, and DBT. He has filed 2 patents, edited 2 books, published 6 book chapters, and has 50 internationally peer-reviewed publications to his credit. Today he is going to talk on steps in writing a successful research proposal. The platform is yours, sir.
First of all, thank you, Dr. Smita, for your kind introduction. And I would also like to thank the organizing committee who has conducted this very nice program of National E-Faculty Development Program. And I should also specially thank Professor Amrutkar, the principal of the college, and Dr. Prashant Pingle, who basically contacted me and gave me this opportunity to come on this platform and talk about a topic on writing a successful research proposal. So the title is very generic. So I believe before moving into the actual discussion, you might have heard like a lot from other veterans who have been speaking from yesterday. They might have covered a lot of topics which might be repeated again, but I'll try and see if I can present some new perspective and then try and cover some new approaches while discussing about what are the different steps that can be taken to achieve or taken to like write a successful proposal. So before going into the actual discussion, let's understand first thing, let's understand a discussion of two colleagues, like when we write a proposal, before writing a proposal, so what exactly the proposal is like. So everyone is like little worried about, so we know how to do the science, we know how to do the experiments, so we can plan a study. So why we have to write such a long piece of like you can say draft or long piece of work and then submit it to the funding agencies? Why all this fuss is about? Why I should write a detailed proposal of my study before I even begin? Because proposal is something that we haven't done anything so far. We have thought out an idea and then we are planning to do something around it, or maybe we might have done something preliminarily and we got some results and we want to expand more on that and try and see if it can work and then give us some more details about it, right? So that is something where the proposal comes around, right? So then it is like the question always comes, why there is a need to write all these things? Because this becomes a prerequisite to apply for a grant to the funding agency or to any agency that gives you the financial assistance for conducting several studies or doing some sort of research, right? So it is very important that if you have some idea, you should always put that into some perspective, you should always put that into some writing, and then you should present that as a study so that the committee or the the experts can review that, and they might give some suggestions, they might give some recommendations which can help us to improve our plan of study, and then which can also help us to like see that how differently we can plan different studies, right? So all these things always come into the discussion. So it is always very important that before going forward conducting any research experiments, it is always important that we should always think about a detailed plan of a study. So research proposal is nothing but about a detailed plan of a study that we can think of, and then that we can plan in the future. This is sort of an organizational plan, or you can talk about a comprehensive plan that you're working around in your particular area of research. Okay, so we know that the plan that we might design might change over a period of time, right? Because change is inevitable. So by drafting a proposal, by putting those ideas together, it will certainly help us, or it will certainly save our time going forward, that we don't have to go into random places and do different things. Rather than we might be more focused because we already had laid out the plan in the research proposal. So that's why it becomes very important. If you have a research proposal in place, that will save your time, and that will keep you more focused, and you can say more streamlined in working particular area of your research. Okay, so that's why it becomes a very very important that you should have a research proposal in place. Now the second question that always comes to the mind now, why there is a need for the proposal, right? What are the reasons why we should go for the proposal, right? So there are multiple things that we can talk about. So if I believe correctly that the participants here who are attending this program, there are different students, there are different faculties from different age groups, and then they might be from different streams, right? So everyone is trying to get some assistance in terms of some finances from different funding agencies. Students might be applying for doctoral fellowships. The students who have completed their PhD, they might be applying for postdoctoral fellowships, right? So there are principal investigators who are running their lab, but to run the lab, to carry out the experiments, they always need a grant, because with that grant only you can buy chemicals, you can buy, like you can say different kits, you can buy different glasswares, or you can hire a manpower which can give the fellowship to the manpower, and then eventually that student can work for you on that particular defined project, right? So there comes a need for the proposal. Then there could be postgraduate research projects. Like nowadays we know that due to change in the curriculum, in the final year B Farm also the students are working for their research projects in their 8th semester, right? So it also becomes very important that to run their projects in the lab, we should also have some money in place, because without money we cannot buy anything to run the lab, right? So that is why it is always important that if you are seeking some financial assistance, you should always have some projects or some proposals that are being sent through, and then with that proposals you are getting some money to run those projects. Okay, then apart from that, we can also talk about some research grants and projects which are written by universities as such, which are big projects, which are sort of projects that or proposals that are written by universities, institutes, colleges, and different centers, where they seek a large amount of fund to build a structure, to build infrastructure, to build different centers which are basically advanced center to run a specific area for research, right? So that is why there is always a need that you should always have a defined plan in place, and without that plan you can't have the money coming in, right? Because any committee that gives you the money, or any funding agency that gives you the money, that always asks for your particular plan. So that plan could be like for a period of 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the line. It could be for 10 years as well. So if you look at on an average, the Indian funding agencies that support different projects, they always give you the money for at least 3 years, right? So 3 years is a good timeline where you can define some sort of you can plan some sort of a research, and then you can have that research going for 3 years, and then you can come out with some you can say expected outcomes, which could be like sort of a publication, some technology, some commercialization, right? So all sort of things are always there. So there always comes a need of a proposal, because this proposal gives a defined platform for the funding agency to run through and find out what plan of action you have in place, what sort of studies that you're planning, and then if they are feasible, they can think of giving you the proposal. So it could be like into different areas, as I already mentioned. So it could go for doctoral students, postdoctoral students, principal investigators, postgrad students, which could be MSc, M.Pharm, right? And then it could be for at the level of universities, institutes, and colleges and centers as well. Okay, now coming to the next discussion, now we need to understand basically what is a research proposal. So if you say, if we want to define it into some like few words or in a single line, we can say that a research proposal is a comprehensive written plan of a study, or you can say it's a organized written plan of a study, because it's sort of a plan which we are foreseeing that if we do this kind of a things, we might be able to get some sort of an outcome, and that outcome could be beneficial to the society in the form of like some sort of a research that we are doing, or some sort of product development that we are doing, some sort of a technology development that we are doing, so which is eventually going to contribute and going to help the society, right? So that is why it is always very important, because this is a public money that funding agencies are going to give you, right? So you should always have a comprehensive written plan, right? And that plan always includes a statement of intent. So you should have some intent, some motivation, which will spell out the details that what exactly the researchers or what exactly the principal investigator they are trying to do by taking this problem and then trying to see what exactly they want to achieve by developing this sort of a proposal or developing this type of a research study. Okay, then it can also permit, like it can also permit others to learn about intent and research, right? Where the other stakeholders which are working in the same area of a research, they can also give some suggestions, the experts can give also some suggestions, and then they can also help to streamline our plan of action or streamline our study or streamline our research proposal in much better way so that it can be very impactful and it can achieve some good results. Okay, and apart from that, we can also talk about that researchers, when they write a research proposal, they should have a clarification, they should think through exactly what needs to be done. Because if you don't think through the problem that you're trying to address, and if you randomly place some objectives and some sort of an ideas which are like sort of more ambitious, which you don't think that they might not work in the lab, which is like over ambitious thing that you can plan, so in that case this might lead to some unintentional problems, because you are leading to a research experiments where they are not feasible, right? So that should not be a part of a research proposal. So we should always have a clarity that what we are trying to do, and we should always have a clarity about what we are trying to do. It's a doable thing, right? So we should avoid the unintentional problem. So all in all, what we can say in summary, research proposal could be a comprehensive or organizational plan of a study that we are trying to intend to do in future, and then for that we are seeking some assistance and we do have a clarification about what exactly we are planning to do. Okay, so talking about types of research proposal, so now we know that what is a research proposal. So now let's understand what are different types of research proposals are there. So as I listed out, the research proposal can be written by like different stakeholders, right? So there could be people who are applying for, like who are getting some degree, so in the form of like say B Farm 8 SEM students, they work on some shorter research projects for 3-4 months. They could have some idea, which is a short research proposal. Then we have master students who are completing their M.Pharm in different streams of like sciences, like including pharmaceutics, pharmacology, chemistry, right? And then you can name them. So they can also like they run 1 year project for their thesis, M.Pharm thesis. So that 1 year project is also short 1 year research proposal, because we have some defined problem, we have some defined objectives, and then we are trying to solve that problem by achieving those objectives, right? And that is what exactly that research proposal becomes for. So in that case, we can categorize one of the research proposal as a research proposal for degree. So in that case, degree could be B Farm, M Farm, or it could be PhD, right? So all these degrees where the students are completing their graduate studies, they can write a research proposal and they can have some plan in place which can be basically thought through and then think through, and then eventually they are trying to achieve those objectives, right? Second type of proposal we can talk about, it is a proposal that where we are seeking a financial assistance. So this proposal is primarily written by principal investigators, like professors, which could be assistant, associate, and a professor grade, who are trying to run their lab. We are trying to who are working in a specific area for research, right? So to run their lab, to support their students, to run different experiments, they always need a financial assistance. So financial assistance can come from different places. So your university, college, centers can give you some financial assistance to set up your lab, to run your lab at like bare minimum scale. But when you are thinking like a bigger project, bigger ideas, and bigger research, like you can say proposals, in that case you need a good amount of money to run that lab, right? So any project that goes like anywhere between like say for 1 year to 3 years, you need a good amount of money. It can be anywhere between 10 lakh to 50 lakh to up to 1 crore, right? So that could be a finances that you might require to build an infrastructure in the lab where you can buy different equipments, buy different instruments, buy different chemicals, then glasswares, different kits and whatnot, right? So all these things are there. So in that case, you need a good amount of financial assistance. So in that case, the second type of research proposal that can become, it's a proposal for financial assistance that is being sought out by specifically the principal investigators or the professors or different scientists working in different labs, and then they write a detailed plan to a funding agency where they ask the funding agency to support their proposal or support their idea, where they can run that project for a certain period of time. Okay, then third type of research proposal that we can talk, it can be like a proposal by government and industry, right? So there are a lot of consultancy projects are being run where if you have developed some expertise and you know what needs to be done in that particular area where you are working in. So if any industry facing some problem and they seek your expertise, in that case you can also seek write a proposal to the industry, to the government, where in exchange of a services that you give to the government, they might give you some money, and then that money that you can use for building your lab or building your proposal. So in that case, you can have a different components where you can have your own consultancy service content consultancy that can be paid to you because you are putting in your intellect there. Then secondly, by putting your intellect, you are solving the problem in your research lab or in your department or in your center. So for that also you need money, because same what we are doing in the second type of proposal, you are also seeking a money from government or industry. So this type of proposal becomes sort of a consultancy proposal where you might seek a money from government and industry in exchange of services, right? So that way, that's how we can classify proposal. So there are multiple different ways we can do sub classification as well, but these are the broad areas I think which I thought like this might be a good way to categorize the research proposals, where we can seek proposals for degree, financial assistance to run the lab, and then to run the consultancy provided by government and industry. Okay, now coming to the next slide, then comes the next question: what is the importance of this research proposal? So it's sort of a contract that we are trying to make between the principal investigator or the researcher and the funding agency. Now we are going to talk in large about writing a research proposal as a professor, assistant professor, or associate professor to different funding agencies, and what is the importance or significance of those research proposals. Okay, so if you see that we sort of write one proposal as a draft, and then we are sending that proposal, and then where we have laid out entire detailed plan as a researcher what we are aiming to do, and then we are sending it that to the funding agency, right? So funding agency will like ask some experts to come, and then they form a committee. That committee will go through your study or plan of a study, and then they will think about what exactly this proposal is about, right? What area it is trying to address, what sort of problems in the society it is trying to address, what sort of outcomes it might be giving, and it might be beneficial to the society, right? So all sort of things are there. So it basically serves as a contract between researcher and a funding agency, because funding agency is going to give you the public money. That public money you have to utilize very wisely to make sure that what you have laid out as a plan, you are going to work on that plan, and then you're going to come out with some beneficial outcome, right? So that outcome could be like a commercial product, commercial technology that can be translated to the industry, or it could be anything that is going to serve the society. Okay, so if you look at the importance of the research proposal, it should explain the significance of your project to different organizations. Like different target organizations are there which are going to get benefited, like so it could be hospitals, it could be pharma industry, it could be general society, right? So we can talk about a large number of beneficiaries that can be coming out if we think of an area of pharmaceutical sciences, because pharmaceutical sciences and medical sciences is an area where we are addressing large group of stakeholders into the society, right? So that way, the importance of research proposal is that it should explain the significance of the project that we're trying to plan, and then what exactly it is going to help and how it is going to help the different organizations. Okay, then another thing is that the proposal, it should also demonstrate the quality, and it should also have the importance of the project as well as your ability to conduct the proposed research. Okay, so it's not something that you one day you thought out a plan and then you think that let me write a research proposal and then let me ask for the funding, right? So the experts who are going to go through your proposal, they are going to see through everything. So what is the quality of writing that you have done, right? So what sort of proposal that you have done, what sort of experience that you have in your background, right? So what sort of project that you have worked so far, is there any area of research that you have built on your own, then you are working in that particular area of research, and then you have expertise in that, and then definitely if they give you the money to run this project, you will not face any problems. You will be able to conduct the proposed research very easily because you already have the experience, you already have the expertise in there, right? So this all things should reflect in your proposal, that there is a quality, there should be a quality, there should be an importance that you're trying to address some issues of the society, and then apart from that, there is an ability that you have to conduct this proposed research. Okay, then apart from that, if you look at the proposal, it also gives you an opportunity to think through, right, what exactly the problem that you're trying to think about, and then how you're going to address that problem. So when you think over and over again this particular problem, it will refine your focus, it will make you more focused on what exactly you're trying to achieve, and then it might streamline your work, and then that might reflect in your proposal, right? And then apart from that, the entire proposal is not of course going to be sort of a win-win situation, that where you have laid out your plan and you're saying everywhere that you are going to achieve everything. Of course it is not going to be the case, because there might be a lot of limitations and challenges that might arise, right? So you should also be able to predict some of the challenges and limitations that you might face while working on that project, because funding agencies or the experts who are going to see through that proposal, they will also think through that what could be the limitations or hurdles that might be faced by an individual who is working on that particular research proposal. So when you have an idea, when you are thinking that you're trying to solve some problem, you should also have a focus that where you might refine your things, which might streamline more of your idea, and then eventually it might also help you to build some limitations that you might face. And you should also definitely write about that limitations or challenges that you might face, and then in few lines you can also write how you might overcome those challenges, because that gives you a clear indication that the person who has written the proposal, he has thought out everything, that how exactly that problem might have occurred, what are the limitations, that why people are not able to address that problem. And then in your proposal you're trying to give one aspect of how you're going to achieve that solution of that particular problem, and then what problems you might face, and if you face any problem, how you're going to achieve or overcome those problems, right? So all these things definitely are going to help, because when you go through or reiterate through all these steps, it is going to refine your research proposal. Okay, so that is why it is very important that when you draft a proposal, then you should have a defined components, right? So if you look at the important components of the research proposal, so I'll just briefly talk about three important components. First and foremost, the issue at hand, right? What issue that you have chosen, or what problem that you have chosen, that you are trying to propose in your research proposal, that you are going to address, right? So the first and foremost important component of your research proposal is that what issue that you have picked, right? What problem that you have picked. So that issue is the one of the most important component that you are trying to achieve there. Okay, then the second component is research design. So what is research design? How will the research that you are trying to conduct, how it is going to achieve different objectives that you have laid out in your research proposal. Okay, so the first thing, that you have identified the problem, right? Second thing, what exactly your design around that problem, how you're going to achieve different objectives around that problem. And then last and most important thing, what is the benefit or what is the outcome, what that research is going to contribute to. So if you have the overall summary of your research proposal, it should revolve around these things, that it should address the issue, the problem that is at hand. Then it should also try and talk about the design that you're trying to come up with, what sort of objective that you have in place. And then in the end, when you achieve all this objective by some means, then what is the benefit that you are going to get out of it, right? So what, how it is going to contribute, and how it is going to contribute to the society at large, right? So these are the most important components if you have to put them into like fewer components. Now if you go to the next slide, I just wanted you to also mention about some of the basic components. Now if you look at the basic components, like most of the like speakers might have already mentioned, because if we talk about different funding agencies in India, we have like different funding agencies. To name a few, we talk about Department of Science and Technology. Under the Science and Engineering Board, they run different programs, right? So they run like co-research grant, SERP, sure. There are different programs are there. Some of the programs are specifically for the women candidates who can support the women who working in different areas of research for their particular proposals, right? So all in all, if you look at the proposals that are being called by DST, DBT, ICMR, right? Then Ayush, then different Department of Healthcare and Family, Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers, right? There are different industries are there too. Then there are CSIR labs are there, or CSIR is there, who basically calls for proposal. So if you look at in all these different funding agencies, when they call for the proposal, they do have a defined format, right? And in that defined format, there are going to be different components which are laid out there, and these components are basically form an important part of the entire proposal, because in each and every component they are seeking some information, and when you provide that information, they are going to go through that information, and then they are going to make out what exactly this entire plan is about. It is well thought plan or not, it is having all the components that are required there or not, right? So all these things are always there in place. So if you look at some of the important or basic components, there might be many that we can add to the list, but very important that I just wanted to mention is that there is a title, right? That always is very important, because the title, it serves as a mini abstract of your entire study. Because if you look at the title, it is going to tell everything about what you're trying to achieve, right? Second component becomes your introduction, which basically defines everything that you're trying to address into that particular area, right? Then third and most important one is research problem. So the entire area that you have picked, what is the research problem that you're trying to work on. Then once you have the research problem or the question at hand, the next thing becomes what are the aims and objective with which you are going to achieve all these things. Okay, so the aims and objective becomes a very important thing. Then procedure and methodology, how you are going to define or design your experiments, and then how you are going to achieve all these things with the help of carrying out different experimental designs and different methodologies. Then once you run through all these experimental designs and methodology, you're going to achieve some outcomes. There might be some limitations that you have faced, right? So all these you should be addressing there. Okay, so this thing is very, very important that we should also talk about all these things in your proposal. Then comes the logistics. So logistics is all about what infrastructure, what facilities, what sort of things that you have in your department, in your university, in your center, in your institute where you are working, right? Because for to run any experiments, you might need different instruments. Let's take an example that you are running some, let's say, a formulation development, and you want to measure the drug content in your given formulation. So there might be a requirement of UV visible spectrophotometer. You might require HPLC. You might require LCMS, right? So these are high-end instruments that you are always going to need to have in your department or in your institute. So these are very important things that you should have in your department. Am I audible? Am I audible? Yes, please. Am I audible? Can anyone answer? Yes. Am I audible? Can anyone answer there? Okay, so to continue, just I wanted to mention that we should also talk about collaborations because nowadays most of the research projects that we always talk about, the funding agency always seeks that what different collaborations that you have, right? Because in if you have multiple collaborations and if you are designing a multi-institutional research proposal, it always becomes very easy for the funding agency to see that there are many experts involved in conducting these studies, right? And this may help, right, to run this project in a better way and then to achieve its objective that are being laid out there, right? So this is why it is very important that if you have a collaborations, if you have a collaborators that are going to work with you on your research proposal, it is always going to be very, very effective, right? Then in the end, we always talk about references, and then I think I have repeated that references here two times. Instead of references, there was an acknowledgement that we always talk about, and then some sort of a collaborations and conclusion that we can talk about there. Okay. Now, coming to the steps, as I wanted to talk about steps to write a successful research proposal, so here are some steps that I wanted to show you. Basically, what are the different steps that we are looking at when we have to write a successful research proposal? Okay, so first and foremost, what is the plan that we are looking at, right? So first step to write a successful research proposal is that we should choose a research topic, right? So there should be a research topic that we should have at hand that we are going to work on, right? So this is your first step of designing a research proposal, that you should have a research topic or research proposal at hand. Okay, second thing is you should narrow it down and find out your niche, because everyone works in a different area for research. Okay, and then you should be able to narrow it down, and then you should know that which area that you are thinking that you might be able to work in. And if you have some other objectives in your research proposal, you might find some collaborators who might work in that particular area, and they can support you in your research proposal, and you can name them as a collaborator in your research proposal. Okay, so far what you have done, you chose the research topic, you narrow it down to a particular area of research, and then eventually in that particular area you have identified some problem, right? There are many areas where people work in, right, and different experts work in different areas. So basically it is not that people who are working in different areas, the problems are not being addressed, right? There are problems that are being continuously addressed, but it is only thing that we need to find out what is the lacuna, what is lacking there, which is not being addressed, and is there something that we can pick and choose and can work into that particular area or particular research problems. Okay, then we should develop a clear research question, which basically becomes your hypothesis, because without having a research questions, how you are going to address that particular problem. Okay, so that also one thing that we need to develop a research question. Then we have to create a research design that exactly how we are going to address that entire problem. What has been done so far, what is lacking there, and what sort of an area that you might like venture into, and then how we are going to design an answer to that particular problem that you have picked up, right? And then thereafter becomes a thereafter starts a writing up of a research proposal. So next thing becomes your writing of a research proposal, right? So first and foremost, because beforehand you have to do a lot of things, the background check that you have to do, that you are working in certain area of research, you have to narrow down to your particular area expertise, and then you have to identify a problem in that area. Then you have to develop a research question, that is an hypothesis, and then you have to create a design that how you are going to answer them. And once you have everything done in place, then you can think of writing a proposal, right? So next thing becomes your how you are going to write that proposal. So when we get started with the writing of a research proposal, we should know the requirements before we start. Okay, so as I said, there are different funding agencies. Different funding agencies can have a different requirements as per their demand, that we have to tweak and change the proposals. We can have different headings and subheadings in which we have to mention different, like you can say, details about that entire research proposal. So if it, I just listed few of two of them here. So in that case, you can see some of them, like title is everywhere required. Some of them ask as an outline, some of them ask as a summary, some of them ask as a background, some of them ask about literature review, problem statement. So moreover, the information remains same, but it is ordered, or it is basically requested under different, you can say, headings and subheadings. So what we are going to know, that which funding agency that we are trying to apply this research proposal, where we are trying to seek the fund. So from there, we have to find out what is their requirement. So what they are asking for throughout that entire format of the proposal. So we have to first find out which funding agency you want to apply for the proposal, and then before getting started, we should also have to go through the step, or we should also do the background check that I mentioned in the previous slide. And then eventually, once you have all that information, then you can start everything into writing a research proposal, right? So the first important thing of the research proposal is your title of the proposal, right? So I just wanted to draw some analogy here, how exactly the title of the proposal looks like. So title of the proposal is nothing but a clear mini abstract of your entire study that you are planning to do there, right? So let's take an analogy here, that you are trying to go to some destination, and you are putting that destination on your map, right? It's a Google map or a GPS map. So in that case, what happens when you put that destination there, it's a defined destination, right? Because we are trying to go to certain area around, and then we are trying to put that area, that how we should go there, right? So that area or the destination becomes a sort of a title, right? Because you have a defined, a clear destination where you want to go. And then when you put that destination on the map shows you different ways how you can go through that, right? So the ways through which you can go to that particular destination defines how you are going to build your proposal. Like what is the ways, or what are the different ways how you can achieve that, or how you can reach that destination, right? So the title of the proposal is nothing but the destination of your, like you can say, map that you're trying to achieve, or that you're trying to go for, right? So the title of the proposal should be concise, it should be non-ambiguous, right? It should clearly state an objective that you're trying to go through into that proposal, and it should also have some goals that you're trying to achieve. It should clearly mention those goals, okay? And then when you define or design the title of your proposal, it's not something that you're going to finalize, because while writing the proposal, most of the things will change during your write up, right? So you should also leave some room for the future changes that you might do in your title, or you might change your title, right? So in that case, you should also have that some tweaking that can be done going forward. So the first and foremost component that is very important for your research proposal becomes your title. So you should have a clear and defined title, right? Then the second thing that becomes very important is the introductory section, right? You have a problem that you identified. Now you have like defined a title, or defined particular title that you want to work into. Now you want to build upon the proposal. So next step in the proposal building is that you have to write some introductory section, right? So there are 4 topics that I would say you should address into this particular area. So the research problem, or the research area that you are trying to pick and choose to write a research proposal, you should also know that what are the different terminologies are there, right? What are the definitions are there into that particular area of research. So you define all the terms clearly and concisely, so that the expert committee who goes through that proposal will know exactly. Because if you have an expert of, like say, 10 or 15 people sitting there, 10 might be knowing that particular area of research, 5 might not be knowing. So to make them clear, in your introductory section itself, you should define all the things very clearly, and then they should know exactly how the things are being there in place, and then accordingly they can read through that proposal, they can understand, and then they might like comprehend everything that you're trying to propose there. Okay, so you should define the terms that you are trying to achieve clearly in that your introductory section. Second thing is, what is the purpose of your study? What exactly you're trying to achieve? What is the justification of the study that you're trying to achieve, right? Then next thing is the research question. What is the research question that you have identified there, right? And you should also mention different variables that you're trying to investigate there, right? So let's understand one by one all these concepts, like what is the purpose of the study. So purpose of the study is your main focus of the proposal, right? So the problem statement. So in the purpose of the study, when you're writing an introductory section, uh, after defining the terms and then the particular areas that you identified, thereafter you should mention the purpose of your study, right? What is the problem statement, what is the problem that at hand you have, and what is the focus of that problem, right? And it should also state what researchers are proposing to investigate, right? So purpose of the study should be very concise statement. It should provide the framework which details are added there, right? So all things should be coming in there. It should also provide a clarification about the field of interest, which area of interest, that which area, particular area of research that you are trying to touch here, right? And this will also serve as a blueprint for your literature review, because thereafter, writing after the introduction, you are going to write a literature review. So literature review is nothing but about what is the summary, what has been done so far in this particular area of research, the problem that you are trying to identify, what other solutions has been proposed, how they are being proposed, what were the limitations, and how you differently you are proposing, what is the new strategy you are proposing. All these things should also reflect in your purpose, purpose of the study, right? So this purpose basically serves as a blueprint for your literature review. Then comes your justification, right? So next thing is justification of your study, because you have identified some problem, there is some purpose why you are running behind that problem. So you should also justify what is the importance, why we should investigate this problem through this particular approach. So we should also present an argument for the study. So let's say an example that you're trying to develop some formulation. So right, one particular drug, the formulations might occur in different forms, right? But we are trying to come up with some new formulation. So we should always clearly state an importance of why we are going for this new formulations, because we have some argument to present that the previous formulations, their bioavailability was low, their release was low, there were some issues, it was not long lasting, it was not sustained release, not controlled release, right? So to overcome those limitations, we might be proposing new strategy where we are trying to achieve better than what has been done before, right? So we should always present that argument by justifying what is the importance that you are trying to achieve through that, right? So good justification, it always includes any specific implication that can be following the relations that are being identified. Okay, so there could be an implication that the current methods that, as I already said, that are being used are not good enough, right? So we should always made it explicit in your write-up, that justification that why we are going behind this problem, because whatever is being available out there, it is not working fine, right? So we want to overcome that, we want to try and go beyond that and try and make sure that we achieve better than what has been achieved so far, right? So you should always present that argument in your study there. Okay, then next thing is your research question, right? What is the research question or hypothesis? So what, so far we have identified the problem, we got the title, we are trying to know what is the purpose of our study, we justified why we are going for that study. Now the next question is, we have to lay out what is a research question or a hypothesis. So what is a research question or hypothesis? It's a particular question that we are trying to address there in your entire research proposal, right? So it should be stated very, very clearly what is a hypothesis or what is a research that you are envisaging, right? So what is the vision, what you are going with, which question you are trying to address there, right? So when we have the hypothesis, it will help us to clarify and become like have a strategy, particular strategy at place where we can try and go and achieve different aspects of the entire research proposal. So it should be clearly stated concisely, and it should be very, very clearly available there, that people who try and read that entire proposal, they should know exactly what is the crisp research question that this proposal is trying to address there. Okay, so there shouldn't be any inference made if hypothesis is well stated. So immediately the experts, when will they will go through the area of your research proposal, by knowing your justification, by knowing the purpose, and by understanding the research question, they know that okay, this is the question that this proposal is trying to address, and this has been done so far, but this proposal is stated that this proposal is trying to address this particular area of research. So we should always present that argument in your introductory section, and then accordingly they can comprehend and they can understand, and then they can read through that proposal, and then they can Sorry, I just lost the connection in between. So your research question also serves the purpose of a literature review. It also serves as a blueprint for the literature review. Then comes the next question that now we have identified the problem, we got the title, we got the purpose of the study, we got the justification, right? And now we got the research question at hand. Now the next question is basically how we have to club all this together. Now we have to build a relationship between the problem statement that we have identified. Now we have to build a literature review or background around it, because we have to state everything in that particular area of research, in that particular problem that we have identified, what has been done so far. So we have to clearly go through, identify the research objective. So we should clearly get that objectives by going through developing a relationship between the problem and the literature review. So if you go into the next slide, what is a literature review? Literature review is basically your background, or that gives like you can say, sort of an indication what you are trying to achieve through your literature review, right? So background or literature review basically proposes what the entire literature review will have all the information that what reader knows already, right? So basically the experts who are going to go through your proposal, some of the experts might be working in that particular area, so they might already know what exactly the problem with that particular area of research, right? So reader might know already. So this background or literature review kind of will act as a funnel, right, which will basically streamline everything what has been already known and what is not known so far, right? And at the end of the funnel, the thing that we achieve basically becomes your purpose, or the funnel point or the end point of your background or literature review becomes your purpose that you are trying to achieve. So purpose can be framed as a research question or a hypothesis. So by doing the entire literature review or the background studies on the research problem that you identified, and then you're putting that entire information, that what has been already known and what has been not known, and how we are going to address that what is not known. So that end point of your entire background or literature review, that is a funnel point, what we call it, becomes a purpose of your study. And then this purpose can be nothing but your research question that you are going to address thereafter, right? Or this could become your hypothesis going forward. Okay, now once you have a literature review, so literature review does not just become a summary, right? It defines entire information around that area, and it is going to support your project, right? The literature also supports your hypothesis, because hypothesis is your research question. So if this is the question that is arising now, why this question was not there before? Because many researchers are already working in this area, right? So what different we are trying to do here? So literature, if you are trying to put that entire information, it is going to support your question, that this question, why it arises and why it was not addressed, what are the limitations there. Okay, so it will also state that what mistakes that has been made by the previous researchers who are working in that area, and how we are going to overcome those mistakes, how we are going to achieve all these things. So researchers should demonstrate the familiarity with the previous research, and then understand the relevance of the study being planned, right? So this is all exactly the literature review can give you, right? The major weakness of the literature review is that basically when we have to make sure that we are writing a literature review, we are trying to address all the information, we should clearly find out the references that we are trying to use there, and then they should be clearly like cited there, right? So in this case, it is very important that if any expert is going through the literature review, and if you're writing some information, he should be able to easily find out where that information is coming from, right? So referencing, citing is a very, very important part when you draft a literature review, right? So after literature review, so you have problem in place, you have purpose, you have justification, you have identified a hypothesis, or you have a research question. Now you have done all background and literature review. Now the next question is, what is the aims and objective of your proposal, right? So this is the next step when you write the research proposal. So you should clearly spell out the specific aims of the proposal. So aims could be more than one or two, right? They are general, right? And then objectives, they are more specific, right? So say like how, what aim you can write. So let's say the people who are working in area of chemistry, right, they design and synthesize new chemical molecules, right? So the purpose or the general aim could be to design and synthesize the compounds for antimalarial activity. So this is very general, design and synthesis for antimalaria, right? But if you have to define a specific objective, to synthesize a specific scaffold, right? And why that scaffold? Because it is already known to have the antimicrobial antimalarial activity. We are trying to modify it by adding some new functionalities on it, and then we might get new scaffolds which can become a new lead molecules, right? So that becomes a more specific objective, right? So in that antimalarial activity also we can categorize that into different ways how we are going to achieve that, right? So when we talk about aims and objective, aims could be general, objectives could be very, very specific. So when we talk about objective, so individualized hypothesis of like whatever the research problem we have, that research problem should be addressed with some two to four objectives, and these objectives should be very crisp and clear, that by achieving this objective, what exactly we are going to achieve as an entire outcome of the research proposal. Okay. Apart from that, the aim of the research proposal should not be interdependent, right? So there could be more than one aims, but this aim should be different, and each and every aim should have its own specific objectives, right? That is what exactly we try and get in here. Okay, then the next thing comes is procedure and method. Now we have the aims and objectives in place. Now we have to discuss in detail in your research proposal while writing the methodology how we are going to carry out this different methods. It includes discussion of the following. So what is going to be your research design, right? What exactly you're trying to, how you are going to achieve that entire objectives, right? So what if you are going to run different experiments on different animals or cells, so what is the sample size that you're going to use? So n number is equal to what, like 2, 3, 6, 5, right? So then you have to mention those replicas that you're going to use, right? So when you design all these experiments, what instrumentation you're going to use for your analysis. So for synthesis, if you synthesize any compound, you might need NMR, HNMR, CNMR, right? To confirm your synthetic compound, right? You might need FTIR. So all those things are there. So you need those specific instrumentation. You have to mention that you are going to use that, right? So each and every procedure should come in detail there. Then also we have to talk about different internal validity, that it has been done before. We will use that as a reference, and then we will validate our outcomes along with what has been done so far. And then all in all, when we talk about all these methodologies and procedures, you're going to generate huge amount of data, right? And that data needs to be analyzed very carefully, because data is a very important part of your research outcome. Because all the data, it could be positive, negative, anything, you have to we should be able to interpret it. If there is a negative data, we should make out what is going wrong in there in the experiment, why exactly it has gone negative, right? So all these things are there. So along with mentioning the procedures and methods, we should also justify the method of the choice, why we have picked and choose this particular methodology to carry out this experiment. So we should also cite the references there. What is the reason behind this? What is the importance behind this, right? Then we should also understand the different principles or different assets that we are planning, different methodologies or different instruments that we are using. What is the principle? How do they operate, right? What is the outcome that they give us? So we should always have all this information. And then in the end, we should be able to prove the feasibility of our study, that by running these procedures and methodologies, we might be able to achieve all the outcomes, or this outcome would be very, very feasible in that sense. Okay. Then eventually, one more important part that we always have to talk about is the preliminary data. So any research proposal, it's sort of a proposal, it's a future plan that we are planning, right? So in some cases, it is not always possible that you might have already done some work on that. But if you have already done some work, that is always going to be a very strong point for your research proposal. Okay. And that can become a preliminary data, right? So let's say that you are working on some formulations, say some lipidic nanoparticles or nanoparticular formulations, and then you can tell that you have developed that nano formulations, but not for this drug. And then you can mention in your preliminary data that you have already developed these nano formulations, which are blank ones, but we can load this new drug into it, and we might see that this could become a better carrier or better vehicle for delivery of this particular drug, right? So in that case, you can write about a preliminary information about how you have developed that nanoparticles, how you're going to use them, right? So the preliminary data is always a very strong, you can say, input that can go in your proposal, and this will also clearly indicate to the experts or the committee that the person who is proposing this research, he has already started working in that area, and to extend more on that, he is seeking a financial assistant, right? And that way it becomes very important. There are highly chances that your proposal might see through the screening, and then it might reach to the final stage where you might win, or your proposal might become successful if you have some preliminary data in place, right? So you can some examples that you can show that the technique has worked for a related project. You can mention some para on it. Then data that you want to show that whatever the hypothesis that you have planned, you were able to achieve at least some part of an objective that of that particular hypothesis, right? So that's how exactly you can present a preliminary data, right? Then eventually results and findings. So results and finding is not clearly an out like part of a research proposal, because we are just proposing something, we haven't achieved anything. But if you are presenting a preliminary data, in that case you should concisely present your results and finding of your preliminary data. Entire research outcome or research data will go into a research project or research report that you are going to submit at the very end. But if you are presenting some preliminary data, I would recommend that you should always present concise details or clear details of the results that you have achieved there. Okay, so usually results are not found in the proposal section because we are just proposing here. But as I already said, if you are presenting some preliminary data, it is always good to present some results in that. Okay, so that becomes part of the discussion there. Then once you have like you can some methodologies in place, now next thing becomes very important. What is the timeline, what is the deadline? So you are writing this proposal for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. So you have to clearly indicate the timeline or the deadline of your proposal by providing like say a Gantt chart, or by providing some sort of a graph bar where you are indicating that how you are going to achieve these different objectives and what is the timeline. So it could be 6 months, 12 months, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, right? So maximally in India, the proposals that are being granted by the funding agencies, they are for a period of 3 years. Okay, so in general, so if you are achieving something in 3 years, so you should clearly mention that what is your plan of actions that you're going to do in every 6 months. So when you talk about timeline, it helps you to make sure that to keep your experimental design in the correct order, because you should have your experimental designs in the correct order so that you can always see exactly how this being achieved in defined timeline, right? So it is not going to like go randomly that you're proposing some objective and then that might take 2 years, but you're proposing that in 6 months only. So that is highly unlikely, right? So you should always have a clear idea about what objective that you're proposing, and after some repetitions, are you able to achieve that in 6 months or 8 months or not, right? So you should clearly mention that a defined timeline with which you are going to achieve those objects. Okay, so you should build your timeline. So for that, what you can do, you can consult with other researchers or the students working in your lab who are doing similar kind of studies. So you can ask them how much time this experiment does take, like what sort of other things that need to be done. So you can clearly get an idea that when you are defining your timeline, what sort of a timeline that you should be proposing there, right? So you can say that if I had to break it down, I can say that for literature review, I might take like 2-3 months. So I can read through all the literature, I can prepare a concise draft, and then thereafter I can define some objectives, and then I can start putting each and every objectives in certain timelines, and then I can start working, right? So like say for first objective, I might take 6 months. For second objective, I might take 8 months, right? So that way, once you achieve one step at a time, you might see that your entire timeline will go for that entire period that you are proposing your idea, right? So largely, it is primarily for 3 years. So I have written some research proposals where the research grants were granted for like say 2 years. It was granted for 1 year. Some research grants are being granted for 3 years, right? So to keep in mind that how long that grant is being given to you, you should have clear on how long you want to apply for that grant, or what is the timeline that you are applying for that grant. You should always clearly have an idea that what exactly the objective that you are going to achieve through that. So timeline becomes a very important part of your research proposal. So you have to clearly mention that defined timeline there. Okay, so next, the most important one is the budget, right? So because we are asking for the money, so without telling the detailed plan, what sort of money we need, how much money we need, the budget basically details about overall expected expenses that you are going to achieve through, right? So the we should stick to the budget, because funding agency, when they open the call, so usually when they open the call, they define amount that they might give considering the proposal that you're going to send, right? So let's take an example of DST serve. Usually what it does, depending on what type of call it is, if it's a core research grant, it can go up to 1 CR or up to 2 CR, right? If it's a ICMR, it goes up to 1.5 CR. So anywhere between 10 lakhs to 1.5 CR you can order, right? You can ask for the money, but you cannot randomly just put that number and give me 1 crore rupees or 1.5 crore rupees. You should also have a defined, detailed explanation that for what you're going to need all this money, right? So you should stick to the budget, like what is being asked by the funding agency, and you should also prevent overspending. You should not show overspending, that if you require, like say, chemical of 1,000 rupees and you're proposing that you might need 10,000 rupees for it, they can clearly make out by looking into the Google and finding out what is the cost of this chemical, and they can clearly say that you're asking for an irrational amount, right? So you should always keep in mind, because when your proposal is approved, the funding agencies, they always ask for the list of chemicals, their prices per pack, their quantity, amount from the vendor, and they might ask for quotations as well, right? So you always have to be very careful when you are defining the budget, right? So you should always give the specific explanation for what instrument you might need. You might need staff, you might need a cost for chemical glasswares, you might need some money to go for conferences, workshop. All these things are there. You might need specific kits to carry out different experiments, so everything should come in discussion there. So you should define your budgets as a recurring and non-recurring, right? So recurring means that is going to be required every year. Non-recurring means once you spend that, that is going to be go there, right? So that way you have to break down your budget accordingly. Okay, so depending on the funding agency, that you can do. Okay, so next thing becomes your referencing. So referencing is very important part, okay, because when we do the literature review, when you go for the identification of the problem, we always narrow down our search, right? Because if you look at the steps that I mentioned briefly, in that first step was basically we find out an area where we want to work in, right? That area should be your area of expertise. So in that area, we narrow down our search terms to find out what has been done so far and what is not being done, and how we can proceed into that, what is not being done and what question we can try and address there, right? So for that, we have to narrow down our search. What for that, we can go through internet searches, we can do go through journal searches, book searches, patent searches, we can go through peer reviewed articles. So what is the current literature is out there, so we can do a lot of comparison between what are the review articles are being there, because review articles are the good outcomes that summarize all the information, right? And the primary literature is about the research output of that particular area of research, right? So by doing that entire summarization of entire you can say literature, we can get the information that is going to go in your proposal. And whenever you write some information, some articles, you should always cite those references, okay? For citing the references, you should always use the referencing softwares like Mendeley is there, EndNote is there, right? So there are some more referencing softwares are there, you can find about them also, right? So you can easily use them and we can modify according to our requirements. There are different requirements of the funding agencies that the citation and referencing should be according to this style, according to that style. So many things are there, right? So you should stick to the checklist that the funding agency has given to you, okay? Now the most important thing is that plagiarism check, because when you write a proposal, okay, so that proposal should not be a copy, cut and paste from some already existing data or some already existing literature, because it is very mandatory nowadays that whatever you write, whether it's your MPharm thesis, PhD thesis, whether it's a research proposal, whatever is that, a short summary report of your research, everything should be paraphrased in your own words, right? Nothing should be cut, copy, or a paste from already existing data. So we should always make sure that whenever we are referencing or whenever we are taking some information from previously known literature, we should immediately reference that information, or we should immediately cite that, whether it is coming from the paper, book, chapter, whatever is the web source, right? And we should summarize the full points, and we should try and put that in our own words, okay? And once you write an entire proposal, we should always look for the we should check the similarity of the proposal, because recently I just last month only I submitted a co-research grant. So in that, the DST basically asks an undertaking from an investigator that give an undertaking that whatever the proposal that you are submitting, you have not copied and pasted or cut, copied or pasted, or you have not taken it from some sources, right? And then if we found that it is being taken from some sources, your proposal will be outrightly rejected, right? And we have to sign that undertaking, and we have to upload while submitting the proposal. So I've done that last year. Like every year they are asking, it's not that something that has not been done, because we need to ensure that the ideas that are being there are not copied, are not being like taken from someone who has already been working. So it's not something that it is not well thought idea or something like that, right? So we should always go for the plagiarism check, and this plagiarism check is applicable to everything, right? The research publications, the thesis you're writing, the proposals you are writing. So you should always check the similarity. And if you talk about the similarity, there might be some similarity because some words are common, some techniques are common, some methods are common, right? So you should not be worried about that. So you should ensure that your similarity should be less than 20%, which is like I believe acceptable, because within that 20%, most of the terminologies that are very common, most of the phrases that are very common, they come in there, and that is not like sort of a cut copy paste, because that's how you write your English, right? So in that case, you always do the plagiarism check, make sure that your similarity is on the lower side. Lower the similarity, better you are placed in your submission of the proposal, right? So that is one thing that you always have to keep in mind. Now going forward, the last couple of things that I'll mention and then I'll summarize here. So expected outcome, so we have written so far everything, the idea, the justification, the purpose. Now in the end, we should be writing about expected outcomes. What are the expected outcomes of the proposal? What exactly the findings that we are going to achieve through the research proposal? So there could be two types, quantitative and qualitative. So measurable ones are some students who are writing the proposal, they might be going to get their degree, right? So MPharm degree, PhD degree, with which they have worked on certain project. For that project, they have written a research proposal. So expected outcome of that particular research proposal was they are going to get the degree, right? Apart from the degree, they might get the patent, they might get the publications. Along with that, they might go into participation in conferences, workshops, symposiums, and whatnot, right? Talking about the faculties, they might get like publications, like they might participate again, like all those things are there. They might talk about commercialization, right? Then in qualitative aspect, we can talk about there might be a new development in the area of research that can contribute to the understanding of the subject in a better way. There could be development of new technology. There could be development of a new application. So there are multiple outcomes that we have to list out there, because the experts will see that you have written everything in place. So what you are going to achieve through, what is the benefit, what is the expected outcome, what is the delivery of this project proposal, right? So it should be clearly and concisely visible there. Okay. So all in all, what when we talk about this entire research proposal, right? So the successful research proposal should look like an answer book. The way we write an exam and then we write answers to an exam, similar to that, the successful proposal will be like an answer book, right? So nothing is going to be generic, right? We have to make sure that what is the idea that we have proposed, it is very, very novel. It is not copied, because that is always going to get caught in plagiarism check if it is copied or it is being already done by someone else, because literature review always will spell out everything, right? Then we should also propose a clarity that how we are going to run this proposal, how we are going to carry out this research study, right? So that clarity should be there, right? Then it should be easy to read and evaluate, because we should not make it a little complicated. So the proposal should look like a story, that you are trying to tell some story, and then the reader, who experts or the committee who are reading that proposal, they should be able to comprehend that story. They should be able to connect the dot of the story, right? So it should be easy to read and evaluate, right? So this was exactly there. The schemable means that it should be quickly read out, right? So it should not take much time to comprehend and read. So it should be schemable. And then understand one thing, you write like number of pages, who has a time? No one wants to read the proposals, right? So no one is obligated to fund your work, as long as that proposal does not have any, like you can say, meaning, or does not have any clear output that it is trying to achieve there. Okay, so this is something that we always have to keep in mind. And then one thing that we always have to understand, that all proposals are competitive. Nothing is going to that you're going to submit it and then you're going to get the money, right? So all proposals are competitive. When you submit a proposal, there are thousand other competitors are there that are going to compete with you. So as I told you, last month only I submitted the co-research grant, and in that, when I submitted the proposal, they were applying like approximately 5,000 proposals were already being submitted, and another week was left for submission. So there might be chances that another 2,000, 3,000 proposals might have been submitted. So if you look at the end, like for one particular research grants, like there could be thousands of proposals that might be submitted, right? So the three important reasons to prepare and submit a proposal is always that we should be successful and win after submitting that proposal, right? We should be look for placing ourselves amongst the outstanding finalists, and then we should always gain an attention and respect as a serious new competitor within an area of a research topic, right? So we should always think in that direction, that we want to achieve something by doing this, right? And that is how exactly this proposal becomes a successful one, right? And then what are the characteristics, features of the winning proposals? The winning proposals are always responsive. That means once you read it, you get to know everything, that what exactly this proposal is trying to achieve, right? And it should be familiar. We should not pick and choose an area which is like out of the box, right? No one knows, right? What you are, that is not your area of expertise, but you are trying to jump in there, and the committee which is sitting there, they are finding that this person doesn't have any familiar experience in that area. So all these things are there, right? So we should always pick and choose an area which is familiar to what we are working in. The entire drafting of proposal should be accurate. It should be verifiable. That means whatever the information that we have put in there, it should be verified by going back and doing the research again onto the web search or the journal search. The proposal should be always benefit oriented. So it should always talk about what the outcome of the proposal, how it is going to contribute to the society, what different things it might bring out. It could be application, technology, product, all sort of things, right? And then last and important answer is, or the characteristic feature is, the proposal should answer the big question, why me? Why the money should be given to me? Why I should win that proposal, or why the proposal submitted by me should get the funds, right? So this should be the characteristics of the winning proposal that we always have to take into account. Okay, so I'll end this presentation by the quote of Albert Einstein, that if we know what it was we were doing, it would not be called research, right? So it's a clear indication that whatever we are working in a research, it is not something that has been done before, right? But in the research, we are searching it again and again, which is not known before, right? So we are trying to achieve something which was not known before. So that is rightly said by Albert Einstein, that if it is not known, we would not be calling it research, right? So that is something in research, we are trying to identify something new, and we are trying to get to do something into that area which was not known before. Okay, so I'll conclude with an acknowledgement. So this is my lab. These are my students who are working with me for their masters and PhD. So we are working in different areas of research. So most of the publications and then what are the outcomes that we get from our lab. These are the hard work of all the students who are working with us in our lab. And then I have a lot of research projects coming from different funding agencies, so I should definitely acknowledge them. DSTUT, it's a Department of Science and Technology, Union Territory of Chandigarh. They always support a lot of ideas from different researchers. The University Grants Commission, DBT, DST Serve, and some of the industry consultancies that I have already been running, right? So I have like almost 5, 6 projects that are already being in my lab that are already ongoing, and then we are working in different areas of research. Okay, so I would like to thank here. This is our institute, so I would definitely welcome those who are visiting Panjab University or those who are visiting Chandigarh. Definitely come visit us. We will be happy to show you around and show you around our departments and labs. Okay, so thank you so much. And in the end, I would also like to thank again all the organizers, especially Professor Amrutkar and Dr. Prashant Pingle for giving me this opportunity, and then all the organizing committee for organizing such wonderful event. So I have some of my friends who are participants here, Dr. Amit Tapkir, Dr. Amar Singh Rajput. So I'm getting good feedback from them that this program is being very nicely run. So definitely it is going to benefit a lot of participants and delegates there. So thank you so much. Thank you once again. So if you have any questions, definitely I can answer.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Uh, Sir, on screen, the question is visible. How to mention
Yeah,
national and international
yeah.
status?
The question. So, Dr. Amor, it's a good question. Actually, I was mentioning about the basic components of the research proposal. If you look at there, I mentioned about background and literature review, right? So, if you see clearly in this day, in today's day, like these funding agencies, what they do basically when they ask for the detailed plan in the literature review, they ask for the international and national status of the proposal. So, when we have to write something in this particular area or this particular heading, in the international status and national status, so what are the problem that we have picked and choose? Okay, so that particular problem basically what which different researchers around the globe internationally are working in that area, so we should summarize their work into that particular international status in that particular area of international status, and then same applies to the national status, because some of the labs, some of the researchers might be working in the India as well, right? So they might be working in that area, so we have to summarize what they are working on, what they have done so far in that particular problem, and then what exactly are the limitations or what is lacking there, and why we are picking from that what is lacking in the international and then national labs, what they were doing, right? So we have to mention that a summary of research, the problem that you have identified, that what has been done internationally and what has been done nationally. So we should write like few lines about each and every paper. So this is something that this particular group has tried to work on. This is what they have achieved, but this is not successful. So we present an argument there, and in the end when we conclude the background or literature review, we should concisely mention that so this has been tried and tested, and this has been done by internationally and nationally. Still, this research problem is not solved because the strategies that they were applying were different, and then we are coming up with new strategies. So this becomes a very important part. Okay, and talking about the literature review, year of literature review. So see, I would recommend that if you look at like a recent timeline of 5 to 6 years, that would be the good literature review that you should pick. Because if you pick some review articles, these review articles will summarize a background of like say last 10 years. So if you pick some recent review articles, that will give you a good idea about what has been done there for a decade or so, right? So we should always stick to the references or the literature review, which is of let's say 5 to 6 years timeline. That from where we're trying to submit a proposal. Okay, hope that answers your question. So, any other question?
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Sandeep. Uh, Dr. Sandeep have elaborated very nicely about need of proposal, types of research, and its importance. Some components of research proposals are very well explained by you. Uh, those include title, problem statement, purpose of the study, justification for the study, research question on hypothesis. He added exhaustive note on procedure and methods, timeline and budget of the proposal. And he also explained the importance of plagiarism for the proposal. Uh, I am very thankful to you, Dr. Sandip Pawar. On behalf of our college, please accept the certificate of appreciation.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. I would again like to thank organizers for inviting and giving me this opportunity. Thank you once again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Can I leave now?
Yes, sir. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you so much.